parliament passed a bill of anti-homosexuality, Uganda has faced a growing condemnation from international groups and international community. And recently, we see a business group, including corporate giants such as Google, says it opposes Uganda's anti-LGBTQ legislation, calling it a concern for global businesses and investors operating or planning to invest in the Eastern African country. Also, United States government warned Uganda to be sanctioned due to the violation of a human right. Recently, we see the economic freedom fighter under the leadership of Julius Malema demonstrated in protesting against the bill passed in the parliament to LGBTQ communities and calling for Museveni not to sign the bill. Museveni also himself has described and clarifying that the bill is to protect the African culture and African community and slimmed and condemning the West for putting European social activities on African countries. And also he went far and said, Africans is colonized because of internal weaknesses. And one of the weaknesses he described is that Africa, we don't have a say in the front of others, and calling for Africans to protect the culture and value of African people for the benefit of the coming generation. Despite of all explanation from President Museveni, still the activists and some international organizations think that the bill, if it will pass as a law, it will undermine the human right. And some of them went far to think that maybe Museveni will use this bill and as a law to undermine the opposition party and the opposition leaders. And I remember Julius Malema says, what if Museveni will say maybe Bob Wine is a guy? It means the law will be applied to Bob Wine and Bob Wine will be punished by the law. So, and Malema says to be an African is not to be barbaric. To be an African, it means to observe a human right. And this is another contradiction between African and human rights. Of course, if you find what is an African, you will refer an African to the people who live on the continent as well as their cultural, linguistic, and historical heritage. You see, so if you come to the African as a people who live on the continent as well as to their cultural, you see, their cultural. If you go to the culture, you didn't find these issues as Africans. So this is where the contradiction started. And the current generation, of course, we have been modernized. Maybe we don't know our culture. We have been modernized. We live the way Europeans are just living. We do everything like Europeans, especially in normal life. So as Africans, we have forgotten about our values. And if you find the old men and women, they will talk about value and culture. But the young men and women of today, they're not talking about culture or value. They are talking about human right. So human right has coming to replace value and culture. And you find maybe in some countries or in some communities, they're still governed by their culture. If you go, for instance, in Kenya, there, in Tanzania, in Maasai, you will find those communities still are under their culture. Despite those culture and value are undermining the human right. And that is where the contradiction is. But all in all, I'm sure Museveni will not pass this law in the way the law it is, because there is some punishment like maybe death penalty. Maybe this will be regulated, but I'm not sure that if Museveni will automatically abolish this law. And of course, maybe the bill will go back to the parliament and to be regulated. But all in all, what is the stand of as Africans? That is a question that we must ask ourselves when we go out there and say we are Africans. We see how the Europeans they do their own stuff, their own things, how they protect their culture, how they do. That's why the Europeans cannot do what Africans are just doing. The Chinese the same. The Japanese, Japanese are still doing their own stuff in the way of they live since then. That's why if you go in Japan, you find there's green tea. You find some cultural way of living. And we as Africans also we need to have our own identity, and sometimes this what we come to us as making us contradicted. And now we are at dilemma, as I said in hell, that we are at dilemma. We are at a crossroad. We don't know what to defend. Either to defend our African culture or to defend human rights. And human rights is international agreement that we have signed as African countries, as the sovereign states. Also, we signed the issue about good governance and democracy. And if we come in the issue of democracy, also that is an that there is also a contradiction because democracy means majority. What if the majority are accepting things that is violating human rights? It means it is not democracy. What is democracy? That's where now as Africans we need to stand and to say this is good for us and this is not good for us. And for those few words, let me say uh, we as Africans we need to be an Africans. Wherever there are some new laws, new imposed rights, we need to see if it fitting with us or is not fitting with us. You cannot wear everything. Find the shoes that is uh, fit to your feet, to your foot. Otherwise, you can't walk. So that's what I want to share to say. Let us respecting human rights. Also, let us preserve and protecting African culture.